While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season, literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Reaching out to the 50 million Christ followers in America who are approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing for them all their lives. You've tuned into I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. We're your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, along with Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of Retirement Reformation. Check us out online, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org, and on Facebook, Retirement Reformation. And you can also check us out online at iRetire4Him.com. That's iRetire4Him.com. While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to remain faithful to love, serve, and help others. Countless Christians are entering a state of spiritual dormancy as they prepare for and step into their retirement years. We want to help you to see what God has in store for you. Your retirement years can be your best ministry season of life as you take advantage of a lifetime's worth of knowledge and experience, combined with a greater freedom of time and money, and invest all of this in the upcoming generations. It's not retirement as usual, but it's the Retirement Reformation. When you start charting your course for these 30-plus years ahead of you, it can be a bit daunting. So Bruce Bruinsma joins us today to share some insights from inside his latest book, Charting Your Course, Planning Your Next 3 Decades. Bruce, welcome to I Retire for Him.
Jim, Martha, good to be with you. It's a really key time for us to be able to deliver this message, and the need is so great.
It is so great. And so why did you write this book, Bruce?
Well, this book, Charting Your Course, really came about as a result of many conversations, webinars, interacting with people, and they finally kind of get the idea that, oh my goodness, there's something different about retirement, and they connect with that message. But then the next question really is, well, so what do I do now? And so Charting Your Course is really to answer the question, what do I do now? What has God prepared me to do now? How do I answer my calling? That's the reason.
And as we talk with Bruce today, I want to direct you out to the website, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. There's a lot of resources out there, isn't there, Martha?
Yeah, there really are. So we were perusing that website, and people can find everything from a contact page where they can connect and find out more. There's membership opportunities, the Manifesto, which I think is a really key component of a lot of things that we'll be talking about. And then, of course, the availability of your books and all kinds of other resources that I know the listeners, as they lean into this conversation, are going to hear more and more. And retirementreformation.org is going to be a place to fill in some of those blanks, because we're not going to give it all away. We want it. We don't want to answer every question. That's why there's a book, right, Bruce?
Indeed. And there are so many questions. When we realize that for the first time there may be 5 generations alive at the same time. So we've got all kinds of issues that where we don't have any models for, that we're really not prepared to grapple with, and to try to find the context to have these dialogues and conversations so that wherever one of our listeners is, they can find a way to plug in, to gain something that will encourage their heart and inform their mind and give strength to their hands and feet.
Well, let's bottom line this, Bruce, for the listeners, because they're going, well, what do you mean I retire for Him? What is this retirement reformation all about? They want to know, why are we even doing this? What is your heart? What have you seen that's driven your heart and passion, and really our heart and passion towards we want to speak into the Christ-following retirees of this nation?
Well, there's a couple of things that have changed that no generations before us, well, maybe since Methuselah, have really had to face before. And that is the reality that this thing that the world calls retirement is really a long period of time. It's 30 years, Jim. And I think that understanding is foundational to the issues that have come up as a result of that. And we'll talk about many of those issues, some of them today, but on the podcasts that we have that are upcoming. But just realizing that it is 30 years, for a listener, just go back to when you were 20 and then go to when you were 50 and then say, wow, what happened during those 30 years? And the answer is, oh my goodness, just about everything.
A lot.
So why is it that we would think there wouldn't be just as many issues, just as many challenges, just as many opportunities in the period of time between 60 and 90 or 65 and 95 or 70 and 100?
Yeah, that purposeful living, that the intentionality. I mean, I think a lot of us have, the way I like to put it, Bruce, is that for some reason, people think that that for Christ followers, it's okay for us just when we retire, that the American dream of retirement is really what Christianity is all about, but yet that is not true at all.
That is definitely not true. Matter of fact, that idea of leisure being the most meaningful and purposeful thing in our lives is something that took root and started in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, and now is really manifest today. We see from every media that the goal of retirement is to walk the green line with pleasure, to be able to satisfy yourself, to be able to go on a trip, to spend your kids' inheritance, to travel, to play golf, to whatever. And so it's a confusing time because there aren't models that suggest the plan that God has for us during this 30-year period that also has some different life stages within it. And in one of the programs, I'm sure, we'll deal with those life stages.
Oh, yeah,
and you can find that information in our books also.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's so much. I'm looking forward to this conversation. But right now, Bruce, one of the things I want to hear is, what is your biggest concern for Christian retirees?
My biggest concern is that they will live a meaningless, perhaps purposeless, perhaps irrelevant life, and miss the opportunity, the joy that comes from carrying out the plan that God has for our lives. That's the thing that distinguishes the Christian message that we're dealing with from a secular one, is that God has a plan for our lives, and it doesn't stop when we're 60 or 65 or 70 or 80 or 90 or 100. It continues, and we are called to be faithful for a lifetime. And so to really connect with what that means and not to buy into the messaging that we get from the world and maybe sometimes even from our families and from our church. So to be able to change that thinking, to have a reformation in our thinking about retirement.
You're listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the retirement reformation. We are your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and we've got Bruce Bruinsma here, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We'll be right back with some deep thoughts as we dig deep into what kind of materials, what kind of resources the Retirement Reformation has for you. Check them out online, retirementreformation.org. We'll be right back.
There is a move of God in our country called the Retirement Reformation. It's not enough to sit in the grandstands of life, watching the days go by with leisure as a reward. Join us back on the playing field of life, discovering God's plan for you and building purpose and intentionality into every day. Go to retirementreformation.org and click on the Resources tab. Check out our prayer walk and start ministering to your neighbors through prayer today. Connect with your ongoing journey by downloading the prayer app at retirementreformation.org. Click on the Resources tab. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. And we've got Bruce Bruinsma in here with us today. And Bruce, I think the biggest thing that's the reality is that when people retire, and they think, I'm just going to go walk the beaches. I'm going to collect seashells. I'm going to go paint sunsets, or I'm going to go play golf every day the rest of my life, or whatever it may be. The bottom line is, after a couple of months of doing nothing, people are going nutso. They're going crazy. They're going, there's got to be more. I'm going to go back to work. I mean, that's a lot of people think that, don't they?
Yeah, there's a whole series of ways to react to that. I think one of the things, Jim, that's really important to understand is that most of us, when we hit those stages of transition, we can call it retirement, when we hit those stages of transition, most of us are pretty clear about what we want to move from, but we are totally unclear about what we want to move to. And somehow we've adopted the idea that we'll just kind of figure it out, or God will show us as we go along. And so we start down, we start down the beaches, or we start down the travel, or whatever it may be. And I think it's important for us to realize that leisure has value. We're in no way saying that there isn't a need for vacation, there isn't a need for time away, there isn't a need for a place of reflection or investigation. That's all really important. But meaning and purpose,
Right.
that's the next step. And when we realize that God's plan for our life began before time began, that's the way I read my Bible, is that before time began, God had a plan for Jim and for Martha and for Bruce and for each one of our listeners, uniquely and specifically. And to carry that out in the apex, the coming together of the plan happens during these last 30 years of life.
So there's just so much that, I think that as we have this conversation, I hope that the listeners are hearing, this is not just, let's not only wait to have this conversation when we are 70 or 80, but tune in and be leaning in when you're young so that you're kind of getting this plan. So one of the things that I know a lot of people spend a lot of time planning financially for their retirement, and it's a savings mode. For a lot of people, it's a savings mode. But do they ever think or do they have a spending mode for their retirement?
Unfortunately, they do not. So there's a couple of issues inherent in your question, Martha. And I think the point is there is a segment of people that just simply ignore the financial side. There is a group of people that pay some attention to it, and there's some folks that really focus on it. And whichever way you are, it is the thought that it is often fear-based. What I'm afraid of is that I won't have enough. The issue is, how much is enough? And most people never answer that question, therefore they don't have a spending plan because they don't know how much enough is and how that is actually going to play out in all the issues that come up during that transition period between a work life and that retirement period.
So what do they do about that? I mean, what is a good starting point to say, I don't even know how much is enough, and then if I have enough, how do I even know, not to hoard it, but to actually live whatever purpose God has for them?
Well, if I can be obvious, first of all, grab the book. Charting Your Course deals with that issue of how do I start? How do I begin to grapple with this and even know where to go? What's the landscape of my finances? Most people don't know, haven't taken the time to or the opportunity or realize that how freeing it will be to be able to understand that landscape, because that landscape then dovetails right into all the rest of the activities that God has called us to do. As spending 30 years in the financial services industry, may seem kind of strange for you to hear me say money's the least important, unless you don't have any. And so there becomes the dynamic tension.
What's amazing to me, the fear that you mentioned, it is so common. The fear, I mean, you hear, we live in a neighborhood with a lot of retirees, and they're driven by fear. So when you have somebody come in and talk to you about their retirement and reforming their retirement because they've read one of your books, The Retirement Reformation or Charting Your Course, how do you deal with that fear? Because you got to deal with that first so they can actually hear you.
Well, you know what? A couple things drive out fear. One of them is love, and the other one is truth. And so to be able to know that you want to walk in the love of Jesus, in the love of Christ, and the plan that he has for us, and the way that he and God have prepared us. And then secondly, to come to grips with what is true. Most people don't know what is true, even about their finances. They know that money's tight at the end of the month. That may be the extent of it. Or they know they've got a savings account. Or they know they've got $100,000 in a retirement plan, but they have no idea if that's too little or too much or anything in between. So in all of these areas, first, love, and secondly, let's find what's true. We can build off from what's true because we know it starts in the Bible. We know then what is factual in our lives and how to take the truth of the Bible and the facts of our lives, build them together into a more comprehensive picture of God's plan for the last 30 years.
Why don't you tell us your story, how you shifted your mindset from what you'd seen lived out all of your years to where we're at today with the Retirement Reformation. How did you make that paradigm shift?
When I realized that, well, two things. Number one, in the financial services industry, realizing how difficult it is to get people to understand the truth of their finances and to deal with it in a realistic, practical way, to be good stewards of saving those finances. And I just realized over lots and lots of years how difficult it was to get people to do that. And as I got thinking and praying about that, I said, why in the world is that so darn hard? And I realized the Holy Spirit, brought a thought. And the thought was this: their why isn't big enough.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Just think about anything in your life. When you are strongly motivated, when you have a why, man, nothing's going to stop you from doing it. You want to go to visit the Louvre in Paris because you want to see the great paintings there. Man, if that is just a passion of yours, you'll figure out a way somehow, either online or go to Paris, because your why is strong enough, is big enough. And so it is the motivator. So the question that I was faced with what is the motivator that is strong enough to get the financial action to take place, but then, oh my goodness, everything else started to become clear to me. That in fact there were all these issues that needed to be addressed, and we weren't addressing either the financial ones or the rest of them. And so the real thing, that the real insight was that their why wasn't big enough. And then I said, well, what's a big enough why? And a big enough why isn't fear. If I don't have enough, I'm going to be a bag lady. I mean, that's not strong enough.
Right.
So what is the bigger why? And then I realized that God has a call on my life. It doesn't stop. It continues. And that if I am not responding to that call, if I'm not engaged with it, then in fact, leisure can have meaning and purpose. But once I realize, oh my goodness, I've got God's call on my life, now I've got accountability and responsibility.
We'll be right back with more on iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation.
You've spent decades making financial plans for your retirement years. But have you done any life planning? God has a plan for your life, and it includes living out your faith in your retirement years with meaning, purpose, and intentionality. Go out to retirementreformation.org and click on our Resources tab. Download a copy of the book, Charting Your Course, and get started with life planning today. Simply download a copy of Charting Your Course at retirementreformation.org. Make the journey from retirement to reformation, so you can say, I retire for Him. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. We are your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, joined today by Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. Bruce, it's so great to have you here. Bruce, we're so glad and we're so excited to have you.
We are. So, we've been talking about, you mentioned, big concerns for the Christian retiree, but we know that there's good. And one of the things that Retirement Reformation is really set up to help the good come out of the Christian retirees. Talk about that for a moment and tell us, what good do you see can happen as a result of this conversation?
First of all, the joy and the freedom that comes when you embrace the message of the Retirement Reformation as it applies to your life. Because that freedom of knowing what God is calling you to do, that you're prepared, and that you're walking in those steps. That's kind of the first thing and the most important. The second is that we'll have an increased opportunity to experience the fruits of the Spirit. Love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and self-control. Those things will be more of a reality in our lives because we are connected with with doing what God has called us to do, and the joy and the freedom that comes as a result of that, we'll be able to experience the fruits of the Spirit.
Well, those sound like some really great results. So I
We
hope
just
that
want
people are really grabbing onto that.
I mean, Jesus said it in John 10:10. He says, the enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that you might have life and live it to the fullest. He didn't say anywhere in there but to retire and check out. I mean, that's what this is all about, living life to the fullest. I mean, we've got our years where we have worked, and when we head into where we're not going to get paid or reimbursed for what we do anymore, but there's still work to be done. And I think what draws the greatest part of that is when I go out to retirementreformation.org, you've got this thing called the Retirement Manifesto. Tell us about that, because everybody needs to read that.
Well, when we brought together about a year and a half ago 15 thought leaders in this area, and we spent 2.5 days together talking, sharing our experiences, our perspective, and our views, praying together. And the Retirement Manifesto was the result of those 15 people spending that time together, and the Holy Spirit speaking into that dialogue and the result that came out. I would just highly urge every one of our listeners, number one, go and just read it on the website. Secondly, sign off if you agree, and then print out a copy, and for Pete's sake, frame it and put it on your wall. Share it with your kids, share it with your neighbors, share it with your small group at church. It speaks to these issues in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, it really does.
So is the purpose for, so this is the manifesto, is that for somebody who they were retired and they're getting a new way of looking at things, or can someone who's still working, is this a goal for them?
Yeah, I think, and you can start at any age. And of course, God has a call in your life for all ages. It doesn't just start when you retire. So I think starting, let's say at age 50, would be a really good time to start to plug in. On the other hand, some of our listeners may be tuning in and they're 75. The message is still relevant there. There is still that next stage of life that God is calling them to. They may be 85, and it is still relevant to them. And so we have relevancy across the age group, and the Retirement Manifesto will speak to each one of those in your own individual ways as you embrace what it is that you see there in those 10 principles.
Very good. And they can find that on retirementreformation.org. And again, I love the fact that there's so many resources out there that you've made available. There's a blog. There is the different books that have been written to really help through this process. And as we talk about charting your course, making sure that they are knowing that you have made it available, that someone is going to win a copy of the book. And actually, they're going to win a copy of the Retirement Reformation book. And so there's a contact button at the bottom of every page of retirementreformation.org. Fill that out, listeners, and put in your little retirement reformation story. Let us know where you're at, and someone will be selected to get a copy of the book. And you won't be disappointed, because all of us, as we learn, as we get new ideas that the Lord has given us in the area of life that we're in, we can experience that joy and that freedom that you're talking about. So who wouldn't want that?
And you've got available for download those books, right?
As a matter of fact, the Charting Your Course is the third in the series, and the first one was entitled Finding Freedom. Second one is Moving Forward, and the third one is Charting Your Course. And so there are 3 books available there, and you can download those and have those available to you. Then, of course, the Retirement Reformation is the large book on the overall topic. And so here's the key that we're trying to do. We're trying to be able to create the pathways, the different pathways, regardless of where you are in your journey, of how to access the message of the Retirement Reformation and make it applicable for you. We'll have a prayer walk. We'll have a small group study. We will have every kind of resource that we can think of that will encourage you and for then you to encourage others to be able to take that step and that movement into meaning and purpose and freedom and joy.
All right, before we run out of time, I know you mentioned in your book, Charting Your Course, that there's 20 plus ways for people to blow it in preparing for retirement. What are a couple of those?
The biggest one is just simply to ignore the issue. That's the most insidious one, because you kind of don't know that you're blowing it. Then, of course, not planning is a second, because listening to God's plan and then fitting in your plan. So not planning. And when you go to chart your course, there's a whole series of chapters that will help you to chart that course and to go through that planning process. Being so enamored with what it is that with travel or whatever it is that may be, so that in fact you lose focus on everything else. And it is so easy to focus just on ourselves. And so to be able to know that instead of having a world that focuses on ourselves, God would have us look outward. It's also one of the problems of aging, is our world gets smaller, and how important it is to have our world continue to expand. We'll interview some people in the course of these podcasts who in fact will be real encouragement to us in those areas.
Well, and what's so important is that we all realize that God does have a purpose for us, but there's planning needed. There's planning involved. I mean, when God took the people of Israel from out of Egypt and into their land, they had a lot of steps along the way, and retirement's one of those ones. I mean, we spend a lot of time going to college or going to tech school or whatever, preparing for our career, yet not enough of us really think about, well, what am I going to do when I wave goodbye to the last time to my workplace that I spent the last 30 or 40 years in?
I think there's a really very practical example is you're going to have guests over and you're going to prepare a meal. You've got a couple of ways to think about it. One is go to the grocery store and walk up and down the aisles and just kind of as the Spirit moves you, grab different things and get home and hope you can find a recipe or something that will use those ingredients. Or you can find the menu item that in fact will really bless the people that are there, and you can be intentional about your purchasing and about your application, and the joy and freedom that will come from that versus the first one, I think is a really good example.
It's powerful, and we're out of time. It's unbelievable. You've been listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, with your host, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and the Retirement Reformation's founder, Bruce Bruinsma. We're Christ followers pursuing purpose in our retirement, so ultimately, I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him, with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation founder, Bruce Bruinsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the Manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.